there, sword friends. Today we're gonna test this performance series Bowie, designed by Brother Nathaniel and brought to life by Purna Darnal. We're gonna test this on this target. 4 pounds of pork shoulder covered in linen, bound to the stand, and see the kind of damage. This fine edge bevel and 1 pound 3 ounce of steel can do. 4 pounds of pork shoulder covered in multiple layers of linen, bound to the stand, and we'll compare its performance to other two very different Bowie knives that Brother Nathaniel sent me for review before. Such a substantial amount of damage to this. Cut the linen and the wrapping and the tape, and then how deep? Wow! Ladies and gentlemen, I think we have a winner. And I think is probably, cut to the bone. You see? It cut the bone. It severed the bone. And that's really a thigh bone here. That's the amount of damage this Bowie can do. Significance of a fine edge bevel. Well, it really cut like nothing. I felt nothing going through. It tracks beautifully. All right. Number 2 strike. Okay. It cut this piece of flesh off. A glancing blow. Let's do it again. Try to do better. Yeah, let's inspect the damage. So I cut this one off. As you can see, a crisscross actually. Look at this. Oh, look at this. A wedge, actually. A V-shaped wedge. And how deep it went. Yeah. This is my latest cut here. You see? All the way through. All the way. Cut through here. Yeah, it cut it in half actually. And you have to consider this is not on a chopping board. I use a number 2 saber fencing cut. So this is a fighting cut. Not against. It's a very fast snap cut. Oh, the blood is from the meat, not from myself. Well, yeah, it's from the meat. It's all good. That's right. Okay, this is from the first cut. This is the second one. And then there is a glancing blow. Shave off the skin and the fat. There's no doubt about this performance Bowie's capability. Yeah, it actually cut this 4 pound of meat completely in half. This is from the most substantial cut. I want to show you that not only did it cut it in half, it also cut the tray in half. So completely through, for sure. It also cut the bone a little bit, shave a part of it off. Also, if you inspect the cut, the cloth that was under this pork shoulder, look at how many layers they cut cleanly. How many layers? 32, 64. So that was after the blow through this piece of flesh. And yet, let's compare and contrast it with this one here, Midnight Dance, also by Brother Nathaniel. It has a secondary bevel on a flat grind blade. So let's see what kind of difference in performance. What we're trying to do is to assess the damage as soon as possible so we don't confuse one wound to another. Okay, so this is from the midnight dance. Alright, let's get the tapes and wrapping out. Jesus Christ. Okay, as you can see here, same amount of power, but it just cannot, the depths, there's no, it's not even comparable. It's a good cut, but as you can see here, the depths, it cut nearly about half of the mass. Yeah, it went through a lot of material. It just not anywhere as substantial as the cut from the Performance Series Bowie knife. Also, you notice that the secondary bevel result in some tearing of the fabric, because you really need sharp blade to go through the fabric. This is where the protection of the fabric comes from. There's the fiber within the cloth can really dampen the amount of damage. Imagine stacking all these layers of linen. That's what gambeson is. Okay, clothing armor. I don't think clothing cannot provide protection. You stack enough layers of clothing and layer them with fleece, cotton, that can dampen the blow by a significant amount. Number 2 saber cut, downward diagonal. Alright, that made a point. Would you look at that? It cut the cloth and you use new layers of cloth to protect it. And indeed, this is a blow. Yes. Oh, it reached the bone. Yes. It cut pretty, has left a pretty deep gash in the bone. And that bone is just so substantial. There's no way that any of these knives can just go through that. Plus, that's a backhand slash. This is a human humerus next to a pig humerus, aka the front limb bone under the pork shoulder. Notice the pig bone is far more robust and stout than that of a human's. At certain sections, the cross section is even 4 to 6 times thicker. It's simply impossible for a knife to cut through a 2-inch thick bone in one chop. Not to mention it was previously frozen, not living bone, which would be far easier to cut. Even a human femur would be far plausible to cut through with one strike. You can see here, it's still a very deep cut. Yes, I think that's probably to my knuckle here. So that's, I'll say, 3 inches, not even 3, it's 2.5 inches deep. I went through the cloth, and so, yeah. All right, the last contestant, the large center issue Bowie. The biggest of them all weighs 1 pound and 12 ounces. Very hefty beast. I think that did make a difference. Note that this is the bone. How deep did I cut into the bone? About 1.5 inches or so. I cut into this thick bone. That's the bone. Yes, cut open the fabric without any problem. And the depths, two very good strikes. This is the first strike. Cut through the cloth without any problem. It also went into the bone. Yeah. So backhand strike, roughly the same damage. And this is the other strike. It pushed the cloth into the meat. Yeah. Oh, you can see here. That's much deeper, but Yeah, that's as deep as it went. I think, yeah, up here, about three inches. Very good cut. Oh, also went into the bone. You can see here, this is the bone. It had a small incision into the bone. Didn't cut far, and it's a very long wound channel here. Yeah, the fabric was cut pretty cleanly. You can see here. So a fine edge apexing really did the job. So to conclude, the performance-oriented Bowie really did the best against soft material. It went really far. It cut the entire piece of flesh, skin, in half after all the wrapping, tape, multiple layers of linen. So definitely, this is a winner against soft material. Competition cutting, mats, ropes, really any material that doesn't have substantial amount of hard resistance like bone or wood. The edge is quite fragile, but as I always stressed, an edge that does its job is 100 times more durable than one that does not. Not to say this one does not. It did the job admirably. It's not anywhere near as proficient, even provided the extra mass on an edge like that, on a blade like that. And we have to consider the extra mass will also make handling a little bit more difficult, slow you down a little bit. So if you just talk about the handling performance, especially in the context of fighting, this knife is definitely a winner. Also, the design is just more refined. It has more elegant decorations. Not to say this one's crude, it's not. It's also a high status, very attractive design. Wow. let's do a close-up look of this performance-oriented Bowie knife by Brother Nathaniel. In compare and contrast to a few other models that Nate sent me before, as we can see here, it features a full flat round blade, a complete V-shaped wedge. There's no convex geometry, no apple seating at all. If anything, I can probably even see a slight hollow round geometry. So the edge is ultra fine, on par with some high-end chef's knives. The blade is 12.6 inches long, and it features this typical ricasso area found on Bowie knives. Also has a brass backing with disponent, bestia proponent, the large words or motto engraved onto the backing. There's also this brass inlay, the large sigil, twin moons with a cross on both sides of the ricasso. Really nice. As you can see here, the aperture into the crossguard is very tight. So, excellent job. You can have this crossguard of coffin hilt style with some protrusions, spikes on the sides. The guard is heat blued. The bluing is very smoothly done. Excellent texture. I like it a lot. And then you have this grip, coffin hilt grip, surrounding the hidden 10. You can see the bolster here, made of steel, also heat blued to match the texture of the crossguard. The grip is made of horn, and it has the decorative carving of floral pattern, rose vine, and it has a singular brass pin to secure the grip to the 10. The grip is far from simple. On the side, you have these grooves carved onto the side to have a texture for your hand, and it has a octagonal cross-section, 8-sided, and these facets are relatively flat, and so you can index the edge alignment really well. Also, you can put your finger on the side of the grip for a saber grip. Really comfortable, exceedingly ergonomic, and the geometry is far from simple. If you look at from the side, you can see it's not just a flat coffin shape. It's got two risers, contour, if you will, and you can see the tapering on these two risers. The grip sickens slightly and then tapers down. It has this very ergonomic design. It fits my hand perfectly. It's really tailor-made for saber grip, but then you can also do hammer grip. This wasted geometry is really great. It doesn't really swell for your palm, but then you have a good grip with your hand. It's really supposed to be wielded this way. The end of the horn polished. The entire grip is polished to a degree that's highly smooth, but then you also feel the texture of the buffalo horn. There's enough traction. Really excellently implemented, expertly designed. If you compare this to the other models of the Bowie knives, one thing that stands out is the blade's distal taper, the degree of distal tapering, meaning the thinning out of the blade, the configuration of the thickness. This one starts at 8.4 millimeters, excluding the backing, of course. If you count the thickness of the backing, it's 9 millimeters. 8.4 at the base, and it tapers in a more or less linear fashion. So at the clip point, it's down to 5.7 millimeters, and then it tapers down further from there to a very thin upper portion. 2 inches from the grip, it's down to 2.5 millimeters, and then 1 inch from the tip is under 2 millimeters. So at the base, it's really thick. Up here, it's tapered to be very thin. And of course, as a knife, you really wouldn't have any flex to speak of. By the way, this is made of 5160 high carbon spring steel, same as the other Bowie. And it's really rigid, of course, for a blade of this length. The handling really shines because of the distal tapering. If you think of it, there's way more mass here near your hand, near the hilt, than it is here in the middle portion, than up here. It carries the least amount of mass, because after the clip point, it becomes narrower, more slender, so there's less mass from the profile, but also from the thickness. This degree of distal tapering is quite extreme, rarely found on knives. And how much does it have an impact on handling? If you look at this massive Bowie knife, weighs almost 800 grams. It has a slightly longer blade, but overall it's almost 2 inches longer. The grip is also 1 inch longer. You see, this one here not only features a different cross section, it has a spine over here, so it doesn't really thin out, tapers out that much into the edge bevel from the spine to the shoulder. There's a lot of mass here in this section, and then it tapers down as an edge bevel to a fine edge. So there's a substantially more amount of mass on the blade. And if you look at the distal tapering, this one is already pretty thick, 7.5 millimeters at the base, and then it tapers down to 5.8 millimeters at the clip point, about halfway across the blade. And up here is still relatively thick. 2 inches from the tip is 3.9, and then down to 2.8. So overall, it is still rather thick, but because of the fine edge apexing and good edge geometry, it's fine edge bevel, very deep, it still cut really well. It also carries a lot of authority, especially if you choke down here and you do a cleaving cut. It cuts through 3 ribs in 1 strike without any problem. I didn't even feel it. But this is so much heavier than this performance Bowie because of the width of the blade. It's about 15% broader overall. There's a minimal amount of broadening from here to the clip point, about 5% widening, same on this one. And if you look at the upper portion of these blades, still very broad, very substantial. There's a very deep edge bevel, both of these examples. So they're really good for cutting because you always have that width. Also have some mass, some steel on the blade. It's also harder to carry if you think about it, sitting in the sheath, a scabbard on your belt all day. Yeah, I would say that this one is much more preferable. It weighs 1 pound, it's 3 ounces, 18-inch long overall. It's quite light. But you can make it lighter by having a thinner stock at the base and then still have a distal tapering. Of course, that will make it even lighter, but we'll find out what that does to the handling. This other Bowie knife sent by Brother Nathaniel as a quad guidon, taking some inspiration from the German Bauernwehr, having a brass sort of a dual nagel to protect your hand laterally. I like this feature a lot. But if you look at the thickness, it's pretty obvious. This knife here is much thinner. Starts out at 6 millimeters and tapers minimally to this clip point down to 5.5, and then it increases the rate of tapering on the thickness down to 3.5 and then 2.4 near the tip. So the thickness is somewhere in between this one and this, right? This one has the thickest base and the thinnest tip area. But this one doesn't taper that much. It's kind of a convex distal tapering, but it's still very lightweight. It's roughly the same weight as this one. Same size almost. Slightly shorter grip, slightly longer blade, right? But the difference in handling is just light and day. Simple waggle, which is, you can feel is more like a stick or bar. This one feels like a sword, really. It's because up here it carries so much less weight than it is here. So it's all about the distribution of the mass from the tip area in relation to the lower portion. It's the less mass, proportionally speaking, in relation to the entire blade, the livelier it will be. So wrist power cuts are lightning fast, and it's really easy to stop anywhere you want. So you want to do a feint, a redirection. It just also the tip control is just awesome. You can put the tip in anywhere you want, right, at a moment's notice. It's just so fast. But at the same time, because of its weight, it still carry quite a bit of authority. So you can probably see here, it has some differentially hardening line here. So the edge is slightly harder than the spine. Not to the degree of Japanese katanas, of course. One thing I really appreciate about Brother Nathaniel's design is he always features false edge on single edge cutting implements. So you always have the option of doing this work motion coming at an unexpected angle or false edge quick cut, and it's really well sharpened, especially on Purna Darnal's pieces. All the ones made by Purna has very long false edge, about almost 6 inch long. It's really well sharpened. Has a steeper edge bevel, of course, because the bevel of the primary edge is from the spine to the edge, so there's less space for the false edge to have a deeper bevel. Yet still, this is a very stout, capable edge for heavy-duty chopping, maybe. In terms of handling, this is by far my favorite Bowie knife. And I doubt anyone else can design a Bowie knife with better handling at all. And cutting soft material, this kind of cross-section, edge bevel, is ideal, really. I can use this as a kitchen knife, a chef's knife, to do some fine processing all day long. You'll never be fatigued because it's so nimble, so lively. Yeah, there's some weight. Like I said, I compare this to a chef's knife. If you look at this, yeah, it's a Shun kitchen knife, well made. It's a long edge. Yeah, it's very light, of course. It's very thin. Compared to this knife, it's like a toy, right? It's really lightweight, less than half a pound. Okay, again, you can move it faster than anything, but not really faster than this Bowie knife. Why? Because of the weight distribution. All right. Also, lightening it, there comes a point, reducing the weight wouldn't add any benefit to the handling of the knife because, well, you can only move your hands so fast, right? Just like adding weight there comes a point that adding weight wouldn't benefit the cutting authority at all. You simply cannot utilize the extra mass anymore. So I believe that this knife is ideal for fighting, dealing with soft material, flesh that includes living bone, right? Not dead bone, not frozen bones, living bones, cartilage, under fabric. You really need a fine edge, exceedingly sharp, hair-popping sharp, really. And this one can do just that. The sharpness, the edge. There's no secondary bevel to speak of, no micro bevel. If you look at the edge, it's really ideal for slicing through multiple layers of linen, fleece, which you use for clothing, and still damage the flesh and bone underneath. It's ideal for that. It's not for wood chopping at all. Not saying that it will take damage from parrying or getting parried by, let's say, the heft of a tomahawk. It shouldn't. But it's not meant for wood chopping. You can do a far better job with a $20 well-made hatchet. Why would you use your knife, fighting knife, for that? Right? It doesn't make any sense. The polish on the blade is really nice. There's some oil residue I'm not able to clean off. Surfaces are really flat. Right? There's minor rippling on the blade, of course. Hand ground, hand forged, always gonna have some of that, but it's as flat as it can be, realistically speaking. So yeah, I enjoy this a lot. As usual, for a knife or sword made by Purna Darnal, it features a very well-made scabbard. To reduce the weight on this one, it doesn't feature any metal fitting, any chape like on this one. But it's not a missed opportunity. You have all these decorative patterns and grooves, kind of like a leaf pattern, folded. And then you have this nice texture of the cow skin. Really nice. Doesn't feature any sigil or coat of arms of the lodge as found on this one. The twin moons and the cross doesn't have any of that, but it's really functional. There's absolutely zero rattling. Retention is just perfect. And to deploy it, it's almost completely silent. And inside you can see it's wooden core, but the mouse is covered by the leather. Really well made. Nice loop, very thick and secure. 4 pins, really functional. Sheathing is also very smooth. Last inch has some friction, just perfect. Imagine having this on your belt. Well, your confidence in survival and fighting just increased dramatically. And you see this backing, brass backing is secured with 2 pins. Filed flush, but you can still see the remnant of the pins there. One is up down here. Did a better job hiding this one. It's very concealed. I'd like to express my gratitude once again to Brother Nathaniel to generously send me this Bowie knife first to cut with and review it. It's an excellent offering. I recommend this Bowie knife to any knife enthusiast. The price will be more than reasonable. Contact Brother Nathaniel, contact Purna Darnal, see whether you can get a replica of this model or with some minor modifications. I highly recommend this knife. So far, my favorite.